The Lord be with you.
And with your spirit.
A reading from the Holy Gospel according to Matthew.
Glory to you, Lord.
Jesus proposed another parable to the crowds, saying, "The kingdom of heaven may be likened to a man who sowed good seed in his field. While everyone was asleep, his enemy came and sowed weeds all through the wheat and then went off. When the crop grew and bore fruit, the weeds appeared as well. The slaves of the householder came to him and said, 'Master, did you not sow good seed in your field? Where have the weeds come from?' He answered, 'An enemy has done this.' His slaves said to him, 'Do you want us to go and pull them up?' He replied, 'No, if you pull up the weeds, you might uproot the wheat along with them. Let them grow together until harvest. Then at harvest time I will say to the harvesters, first collect the weeds and tie them in bundles for burning, but gather the wheat into my barn.'" The Gospel of the Lord.
Praise to you, Lord Jesus Christ.
Wheat and weeds, good and evil. On Thursdays at 4 o'clock, I don't know if you are aware of this, but Father right at that table over there is doing a session that was streamed through our website called Food for the Soul. This last Thursday, I believe, as I was listening, one of the people, you can text in your questions for Father, any question you like. And one of the questions that came in were the concern that someone had that there seems to be so much evil in the world. And I've been hearing that at home and from other people too. There is good also in the world. I've been thinking about this last week. When are the times this last week in my life even when I have felt God's presence? Yes, there have been times when I've sensed the evil one also, especially many years ago when I was not strong in my faith, was not going to reconciliation, missing those graces we get from that. Now, and that is a homily for another time, but now I strive to focus on God. So the other morning I get up, I usually get to work here around 7. I get up and I'm parking my car outside the garage. The garage has too much stuff in it right now for my car. So I park my car outside the garage and I hit the garage door button and I'm walking out and, the garage door I can see and I'm seeing somebody standing there and 20 feet away is a doe looking at me with 2 fawns, all 3 of them, just looking at me. And I'm looking at them. And I just instinctively said, "Good morning." They didn't reply. But there's a sense of great wonder. I quit looking at them and I walked to my car and I watched them in the reflection of the car window. And it was just a moment, a God moment, because they were very content with me getting in my car and they were continuing to eat my plants, right? And eventually they walked off. So there's good in the world around us. Wheat, weeds, good and evil coexist. They are involved in a struggle. They've been involved for that struggle, that final victory, for a very, very long time. A struggle that will not end until the end of the age, as Jesus tells us. Do not be afraid. Did you know that in the Gospels, we're told, we're challenged, do not be afraid over 20 times. In the New Testament, I believe it's over 34 times. In the Old Testament, words just along those lines are said over 100 times. Do not be afraid. Weeds, good, evil exist side by side. When the first people heard those words come out of Jesus' mouth, the word that's used for weeds is actually, many scripture scholars believe it is a word that is identifying a specific weed that as it is growing, it resembles wheat. So you would not have noticed the weeds coming up with your wheat until the wheat starts to bear fruit. It's kind of like the times around us now. There are times when evil can be around us, good can be around us. It all looks the same at times. But it made me ask myself, maybe you should ask yourself, are there times in life when someone looks at you and they think you're a weed? Maybe they don't agree with your perspective of things, your faith. Am I viewed as a weed? And what strikes me is that what I need to think about is that for those times, do those people know the good news? Do those people know Jesus? What fruits am I putting into the world to help them know that? What fruit am I bearing in my life? You know, 2,000 years ago, when the people heard Jesus say those words, you heard the short version of the gospel. Jesus explains in the longer version what the parable is about. The people that heard those words lived in a different time. The time in which they lived was hostile and conflict-oriented. We believe we are living in those times now, but we cannot really wrap our brains around about the fact that back then, enemies were around and families had enemies. And when you were born into a family, you inherited those enemies. There's many different things about the culture as far as honor, how honor was perceived. And so when they were hearing these words come from Jesus' mouth, they were hearing probably things that would make them kind of laugh. Because what they were thinking about this sower was that he's ignorant. He's got enemies. When you sow your fields, you protect them. You're not going to let your enemies destroy your crops. That's your livelihood. When they heard the servants, should we pull the weeds out? They probably laughed even more because they would be more focused on revenge. What are we going to do about this enemy? They were looking at that first part of that parable from Jesus' mouth as the sower being weak, ignorant, foolish. The enemy is getting the better of him. But then Jesus does this shrewdness, this flip. He shows that the sower, by allowing the weeds to grow and then dividing later and burning the weeds, that actually back then would have somewhat flipped on everyone. They would have thought, oh, wait a minute, he's maintaining his honor. Now it's against the one who did the evil thing. Now he's embarrassed them. They've lost their honor. And then there had to be what I'm going to call a Paul Harvey moment that happened for them. I'm dating myself, where the rest of the story unfolds before them, and it unfolds before us. For now I will say the words that Jesus said to them after he told the parable, because he teaches them then what the parable is about. He says to them, he says to us today, he who sows good seed is the Son of Man, Jesus. The field is the world. The good seed are the children of the kingdom, my followers, you. The weeds are the children of the evil one. The enemy has sown, who sows them is the devil. And the harvest is the end of the age. And the harvesters are the angels. And just as weeds are collected and burned up with fire, such it will happen at the end of the age, for the Son of Man will come. He will send his angels, and they will collect out of the kingdom all who cause others to sin and evildoers, and they will throw them into the fiery furnace, where there will be wailing and grinding of teeth. Then the righteous will shine like the sun in the kingdom of their Father. And then he ends with, basically, if you have ears, you ought to listen to what I just said. You know, we who strive to follow Christ, there will be challenging times in life. We're living through a challenging time right now. Times we wish we did not have to endure. But there are also blessings all around us through these challenging times also, given to us to bring joy and to connect us to God. Last week, I was operating the camera for the live streaming, and right in front of me was a couple with a newborn baby. And I had to quit being preoccupied by watching them and operate the camera because they were in love with this little one. And during the Our Father, the father put his hands up, as many do, and I looked, and the baby is embracing his finger. Joy abounds. The birth of children, the sacraments, graduation's a little challenging, but it's still a joyful moment. An awesome sunset, or maybe it's as simple as a doe greeting you with 2 fawns early in the morning. Evil cannot win. Do not be afraid. Christ has told us the outcome which occurs at the end of the age. Find great comfort and peace in that. Bear great fruit for the kingdom as you are called to do so. Be wheat